Welcome to the channel. I know many of you listen to these videos to relax or fall asleep, and I'm really glad you're here. Before we start today's crime stories, please take a moment to subscribe if you haven't already. And if there's any crime story you'd like me to narrate for you, feel free to request it in the comment section. Now let's begin. Story 1. Natasha Maria Kampusch was born on February 17, 1988, in Vienna, the capital city of Austria. Her mother was named Brigitta Cerny. Her father was named Ludwig Koch. Natasha's parents were not married and did not live together. They had separated when Natasha was very young. This meant Natasha grew up in two different homes. She lived most of the time with her mother in an apartment in the Donaustadt district, a part of Vienna. Her mother worked and money was often tight. Natasha's father lived elsewhere in the city. She would visit him regularly, including for holidays. The relationship between her mother and father was strained, which created a tense atmosphere for Natasha. Natasha was a quiet and thoughtful child. She attended the Braunschweig primary school. She did not have many close friends at school. She often felt different from the other children. She spent a lot of time by herself, reading or thinking. Her parents were concerned about her being alone so much. In the days before March 1998, 10-year-old Natasha had returned to her mother's apartment after a trip with her father. She prepared for a normal school day. She packed her school bag. She also had her passport in her bag, because her family had recently taken a short trip to Hungary. On the morning of March 2nd, 1998, she left her mother's apartment building to walk to school. It was a Monday. On the morning of March 2nd, 1998, 10-year-old Natasha Kampusch was walking to school. A man named Wolfgang Pricklepil was waiting in his white minibus. He was 35 years old and lived alone in a house in Strashof, a town about half an hour from Vienna. He had planned to kidnap a child. He saw Natasha walking alone. He stopped the van near her. Pricklepil quickly got out of the van. He grabbed Natasha. She tried to resist. He was much stronger than her. He forced her into the back of the white minibus. A person who saw this told police it was two men, but Natasha said there was only one. Pricklepil drove away from Vienna to his home in Strashof. He took her inside his house and directly into his garage. Beneath this garage was a hidden room. Pricklepil had built it himself for this purpose. The entrance was a heavy, metal hatch door in the garage floor. This hatch was hidden under a large, movable cupboard. He opened the hatch and forced Natasha down a short ladder into the cellar below. Then he closed the hatch and moved the cupboard back over it. She was trapped. The cellar was very small. It was only 8 square meters in size. It had no windows. The walls were thick and soundproofed, so no one could hear any screams or shouts. For the first 6 months, Natasha was not allowed to leave this room at all. Pricklepil would bring her food and water. He would also empty a bucket she had to use as a toilet. He began to control her completely. He used fear and violence to control her. He told her the doors and windows of the house were connected to bombs. He said if she tried to escape, he would blow up the house and kill the neighbors. He said he always carried a gun. He told her he would kill her and himself if she ever tried to run. He also starved her. He gave her very little food, so she would be too weak to fight or run away. He also beat her. Sometimes he hit her so hard that she could barely walk afterwards. He raped her. He told her she belonged to him now, and that no one was looking for her. To keep her from knowing about the news stories about her disappearance, he only let her listen to foreign radio stations and watch pre-recorded videotapes at first. Over the years, a routine developed. They would wake up early and have breakfast together upstairs in the kitchen. Then he would often go to work. While he was gone, she would remain locked in the cellar. Later, he allowed her to spend more time upstairs during the day. She was forced to do all the housework, cleaning, laundry, and cooking meals for him. Every night, She was sent back to the cellar to sleep. As she grew older, he sometimes took her out of the house. He took her on short trips, like a brief skiing trip. He always stayed very close to her. He watched her constantly. He warned her that if she tried to signal anyone or run, he would kill her. On one occasion, when she was in a car with him, she did try to jump out. But he was driving too fast, and she could not get the door open safely. Her world was his house. She educated herself by reading books he provided. She listened to the radio. She grew from a child into a young woman in that cellar. On August 23, 2006, she was 18 years old. She was outside in the garden, cleaning the inside of his white van. She was using a vacuum cleaner. Pricklepill's mobile phone rang. Because the vacuum was loud, he walked away from the van to hear the call. This was her chance. Natasha left the vacuum cleaner running to make noise. She quickly stepped out of the van and ran. She ran through nearby gardens, jumping over fences. She saw some people, but they did not help her. She then ran to the house of an elderly woman. She knocked on the window and said, "I am Natasha Kampusch." The woman, surprised, immediately let her in and called the police. The police arrived at the elderly woman's house within minutes of her call. They found Natasha Kampusch there. She was pale and very thin, but she was able to tell them her name and that she had been kidnapped 8 years earlier. The police took her to a nearby police station in Deutschwagram for her safety and to begin their formal questions. To confirm her identity, the police used several methods. They found a scar on her body that matched the medical records of the missing girl. Later, DNA tests compared her sample with her mother's DNA, providing a perfect match. Furthermore, police went to the house in Strashof that Natasha directed them to. In the hidden cellar, they found her child's passport from 1998, which she had in her school bag on the day she was taken. While Natasha was at the police station, the officers began searching for Wolfgang Pricklepill. They learned he had fled the scene in his red BMW car after she escaped. They found his car parked at a train station in Vienna. Later that same night, Pricklepill went to the Wien Nord railway station in Vienna. He jumped in front of a moving train and died instantly. He committed suicide because he knew the police would now catch him for his crime. The police investigation then focused on confirming Pricklepill had acted alone. They spoke to his few acquaintances and his business partner. The business partner said he had seen a young woman at Pricklepill's house before, but thought she was a cleaner or a relative. He said she seemed normal. Police thoroughly searched Pricklepill's house and computers. They found no evidence that anyone else helped him with the kidnapping or knew about Natasha. The official conclusion was that he was the only person responsible. After her escape, Natasha was examined by doctors. She was physically weak and underweight from years of controlled food. However, she had no major lasting physical injuries. Psychologists worked with her to help her recover from the mental trauma of her long captivity. The police did not file any criminal charges against anyone else because the only guilty person, Pricklepill, was dead. Therefore, there was no traditional criminal trial. Natasha had to decide how to live her life in freedom. She chose to control her own story. She gave a few careful interviews to the media, but only on her terms and for no personal payment. She used the money from one interview to donate to charities for women. She also wrote a book about her experience, titled 3096 Days, which is the number of days she was held captive. This book allowed her to explain her story in her own words. She also had to deal with the property where she was held. As Pricklepill's heir was required to pay compensation to his victim, Natasha eventually took ownership of the house in Strashof. She did this to prevent it from becoming a morbid tourist attraction. Several years after her escape, she had the hidden cellar beneath the garage completely filled with concrete. This was a personal step to remove the physical space of her imprisonment. Natasha Kampusch worked to build a new life, pursuing an education and later working as a television host and writer, and she continues to advocate for the protection of children. Story 2. Leo was born in a small, quiet town named Greenwood. His mother, Mary, worked at the local grocery store. His father, John, was a truck driver who was often away for weeks at a time. Leo was an only child. The family did not have much money, but they managed. From a very young age, Leo was a quiet boy. He preferred to be alone. He liked to take apart old radios and clocks to see how they worked. He enjoyed figuring out puzzles. At school, he was smart, but he did not have many friends. Other children sometimes found him strange because he was so quiet and serious. When Leo was 10 years old, his father lost his job. John began to drink heavily. He would come home angry. Leo's parents argued loudly, almost every night. Leo would hide in his room and put on headphones to block out the noise. He started to feel very alone. His mother was always tired from work and worry. She had less time for him. In school, Leo's grades began to fall. He stopped caring about his classes. Instead, he spent hours after school at the town's library, using the computers. He taught himself how to code simple computer programs. He found he was very good at understanding computer systems. He liked the logic of it. In the digital world, things made sense. It was not like his messy, loud home life. When Leo was 15, his father left. John simply did not come home from a trip. He called Mary once to say he was not coming back, and that was it. Mary was devastated. She had to work 2 jobs to pay the rent. Leo felt he was a burden to her. He got a part-time job after school bagging groceries to help with money. He gave all his earnings to his mother. At his job, Leo saw people pay with cash and credit cards. He noticed how the store's payment system worked. He started to think about money all the time, how they never had enough, how hard his mother worked, how easy it was for other people to buy things. A new, heavy feeling of resentment grew inside him. He felt the world was unfair. After high school, Leo did not go to college. He could not afford it. He worked full-time at the grocery store, first as a stock clerk, then as a cashier. He was bored and frustrated. He felt stuck. He watched his former classmates leave town for university or better jobs. He stayed behind, in his small room in his mother's small apartment. In his free time, Leo's computer skills grew more advanced. He joined online forums about coding and cybersecurity. He learned about firewalls, encryption, and network security. He read about famous hackers and data breaches. He was not interested in causing trouble. He was fascinated by the challenge of breaking into secure systems. It was the ultimate puzzle. When he was 22, his mother became very ill. The medical bills started to arrive. They were enormous. Leo felt panic. His job at the grocery store did not pay enough to cover rent, food, and now these bills. The feeling of resentment turned into something harder and sharper. He felt cornered. He spent nights staring at his computer screen, thinking about all the money moving through invisible digital pipelines every second. He knew how those pipelines worked. A plan, slow and careful, began to form in his mind. It started not as a crime, but as a solution to an impossible problem. The plan began with research. Leo used his home computer to study a local business, a small chain of 3 hardware stores called Town and Country Hardware. He chose it because their website was outdated. He knew from online forums that old websites often had weak security. He also knew they used a common, off-the-shelf software to manage their sales, inventory, and payroll. For 2 weeks, Leo acted like a normal customer. He visited each of the 3 stores and bought small items. While there, he watched how the employees used their computer systems at the checkout. He noted the brand of their cash registers and credit card machines. He saw a manager type a username into a computer in the back office. Leo had sharp eyes and a good memory for details. Back home, Leo began his technical work. He wrote a special program, known as a keylogger. This program, if installed on a computer, would record every single keystroke typed on that keyboard. It would secretly save the information and send it to Leo. To deliver this program, he crafted a phishing email. He made the email look like it was from the software company that made the hardware store's payroll system. The email subject line read, "Mandatory security update for your account." Leo sent this email to the general inbox he found on the hardware store's website. He also sent it to the store manager email addresses he had guessed. The email had a link that looked official. It said clicking the link was necessary to update their security settings. Leo knew that in a small business, a busy manager might click without thinking. 2 days later, one of the managers at the main store clicked the link. The link did not go to a real update page. Instead, it secretly downloaded Leo's keylogger program onto the store's office computer. The program installed itself and began running. It was invisible to the user. Leo waited. The keylogger sent data to a private online storage account he had set up. After 4 days, the data included a username and password for the store's main business banking portal. The manager had logged in to pay bills. Leo now had the access he needed. Early on a Tuesday morning, just after 3 a.m., Leo logged into the bank website using the stolen credentials. He moved carefully. First, he looked at the account balances. The main business checking account had a large amount of money in it, over $85,000. This was because the owner paid all his suppliers from this account once a month. Leo did not take all the money. He knew that would trigger an immediate alarm. Instead, he set up 3 new vendors in the store's payment system. He named them things like Regional Supply Company and Professional Maintenance Incorporated. He linked these fake vendors to 3 different bank accounts he had control over. These were online banking accounts he had opened months earlier under false identities, using forged documents he had created slowly and carefully. He then scheduled payments to these fake vendors. He sent $9,500 to the first account, $9,800 to the second, and $9,300 to the third. Each amount was under $10,000 to avoid an automatic federal reporting flag. He scheduled the payments to be processed in 2 days' time. He also used his access to disable the setting that would send email alerts for new vendor payments. The next day, Wednesday, Leo logged in again to make sure nothing looked suspicious. The payments were pending. He saw that the store's bookkeeper had logged in and done normal work, but had not noticed the new vendor entries. The bookkeeper was busy with other tasks. On Thursday morning, the bank automatically processed the payments. A total of $28,600 was transferred out of Town and Country Hardware's account and into Leo's 3 controlled accounts. As soon as the money arrived, Leo began layering it. He transferred the money from those 3 accounts into a complex web of online cryptocurrency exchanges. He converted the cash to Bitcoin, then to a different digital currency, then back to Bitcoin, moving it between different digital wallets. This was to make the money very hard to trace. By Thursday evening, the crime was complete. The money was now hidden in the digital world. Leo uninstalled his keylogger program remotely and erased any traces of his activity from the store's computer system and the bank's login history. He then destroyed the laptop he had used for the entire operation. He took the laptop apart, smashed its hard drive with a hammer, and disposed of the pieces in different public trash bins around the city over the next week. The victim, Mr. Jenkins, the owner of Town and Country Hardware, did not discover the theft immediately. His bookkeeper only reconciled the bank accounts once a week, every Monday. It was not until the following Monday that the bookkeeper saw the 3 strange payments to vendors she did not recognize. She called Mr. Jenkins. They called the bank. The bank confirmed the transfers had gone through. Mr. Jenkins was confused and then angry. He called the police that afternoon to report a fraud. The police officer who took the report asked if anyone had access to the computers. Mr. Jenkins said only him, his manager, and his bookkeeper. The officer noted it was likely a hack. He told Mr. Jenkins the bank would investigate, and they would file a report. For the next few days, nothing major happened. The police did not come to the store. The bank said their fraud department was looking into it. Life at the hardware store continued, but now with a feeling of violation and a serious financial loss. Mr. Jenkins worried about making his own supplier payments that were due. The bank's fraud investigation began internally. They traced the 3 fraudulent transfers from Town and Country Hardware's account to the 3 recipient accounts. Those accounts were already empty. The bank's analysts saw the money had been quickly moved into cryptocurrency exchanges. They froze the empty accounts and provided the digital wallet addresses to the police. The police report was forwarded to a regional cyber crimes unit. Detective Lisa Carter was assigned to the case. Her first step was to visit Mr. Jenkins at his store. She asked detailed questions about who had computer access and about the phishing email. The manager who had clicked the link still had the email in his deleted folder. Detective Carter had the store's office computer seized as evidence. A digital forensics expert examined the computer. The keylogger program was gone, but the expert found tiny traces of its installation in the computer's system registry. He also recovered logs showing the program had communicated with an external server. The server address led to a commercial web hosting company. Detective Carter served a warrant to the hosting company. They provided records showing the server had been rented using a stolen identity and paid for with cryptocurrency. The server's activity logs, however, showed the IP addresses of whoever connected to manage it. One of those IP addresses belonged to a public library in a city 40 miles from Greenwood. Detective Carter obtained security camera footage from the library for the relevant dates. The footage showed a young man using a computer in a corner corral during times that matched the server access logs. The face was unclear. However, the man was seen carrying a distinctive backpack with a small, faded logo. Meanwhile, the investigation into the cryptocurrency transactions continued. Following the movement of digital money is difficult, but not impossible on public blockchains. The cyber unit traced a portion of the funds through several wallets. Eventually, some of the Bitcoin was sold on an exchange that required real identity verification to convert it back to US dollars. The account used for this was under the name Leo Martins. Detective Carter ran the name. It came back as a fake ID, but the social security number attached to it was inactive. However, the exchange also provided an IP address used to access the Leo Martins account. This address matched the subscriber information for an internet connection at Mary's apartment in Greenwood. The name on the bill was Mary, Leo's mother. This gave Detective Carter a direct link. She obtained Leo's driver's license photo. She took this photo back to the public library in the other city. A librarian recognized Leo, saying he came in every few weeks and always sat at the same computer. The librarian remembered the backpack. With probable cause, detectives obtained a warrant to search Mary's apartment. They executed the warrant early one morning. Leo was home. In his bedroom, they found the backpack with the faded logo. They also found notebooks with detailed diagrams of computer networks, usernames, passwords, and step-by-step notes on phishing techniques and Bitcoin layering. On a new laptop, forensic experts found encrypted containers, but also evidence of the remote access software used to connect to the hardware store's computer. They found fragments of code similar to the keylogger. Leo was arrested and read his rights. He did not say anything. He was taken to the county jail. His mother was shocked and devastated. The case went to trial. The prosecution presented a clear chain of digital evidence, from the phishing email to the keylogger traces to the bank transfers through the cryptocurrency trail and finally to the online activity originating from Leo's home internet connection and his presence at the library. The notes in his own handwriting sealed the case. They detailed the planning of the specific crime. Leo's court-appointed lawyer argued there was no direct proof Leo was the person at the keyboard. The prosecution countered with the totality of the evidence. The unique combination of the IP address, the library footage, the backpack, and the detailed plans in his notebook that matched the crime's method exactly. Faced with overwhelming evidence, Leo accepted a plea bargain before the jury could decide. He pleaded guilty to charges of computer fraud, wire fraud, and aggravated identity theft. At his sentencing, Mr. Jenkins gave a victim impact statement. He described the financial hardship the theft caused, how he had to delay payments to his own suppliers, and the stress and feeling of violation it brought to his small business. Leo also spoke. He said he was sorry and that he did it because of the medical bills and to help his mother. The judge acknowledged his difficult circumstances, but stated that his response was a deliberate, sophisticated, and premeditated crime, not an act of desperation. The judge sentenced Leo to 8 years in state prison, plus 3 years of supervised release. He was also ordered to pay restitution of $28,600 to Mr. Jenkins, though with his prison term, it was unlikely he could ever pay it. Mr. Jenkins's business survived. The bank eventually reimbursed a small portion of the stolen funds after a lengthy process, but not all. He installed new computer security systems and trained his employees. He was more cautious and less trusting. Leo served his time. In prison, he was isolated because of his crime being nonviolent and his quiet nature. He did not learn his lesson in a positive way. He became more bitter and convinced the system was designed to keep people like him down. He spent his time reading advanced coding books from the prison library, planning for when he got out. His mother visited him monthly, each visit filled with a heavy sadness. Leo's single final thought, as he watched the prison gates close behind him on the day of his eventual release, was that next time he would not get caught. Story 3. Rudolf Franz Ferdinand Haas was born on November 25, 1900, in Baden-Baden, Germany. He was the oldest child and the only son in his family. His father, Franz Xaver Haas, was a former army officer who ran a business selling tea and coffee. His mother was Lena Haas. Rudolf was raised as a strict Catholic. His childhood was lonely. He had no friends his own age until he started elementary school. His father was very strict and believed in military discipline. Franz Haas wanted his son to become a priest. The family home focused heavily on concepts of sin, guilt, and the need to ask for forgiveness. Rudolf grew up believing that doing one's duty was the most important thing in life. When Rudolf was about 13 years old, an event changed his view of religion. He had confessed to a priest at church that he pushed a schoolmate down the stairs, breaking the boy's foot. The priest told Rudolf's father about the confession. His father used this information to punish him. Rudolf felt deeply betrayed by both the priest for breaking the secret of confession and by his father. After this, he began to turn away from the Catholic faith. Soon after this event, Rudolf's father died. The combination of his father's death and his lost faith in the church made him interested in a military life instead. World War I had begun. At age 14, Rudolf lied about his age to join the German army. He was accepted into his father's old cavalry regiment. He was sent to fight in the Middle East, in places like Baghdad and Palestine. He was a good soldier. By age 17, he became the youngest non-commissioned officer in the German army. He was wounded several times and got malaria. He also received medals for his service. When the war ended in 1918, he was in Damascus. He and some other soldiers did not want to be captured. They decided to travel all the way back to Germany through enemy territory. They succeeded in getting home to Bavaria. After the war, Rudolf finished school. Germany was in chaos. He joined a paramilitary group called the Freikorps. These groups fought against communists and foreigners in Germany. He fought in the Baltic region and in Silesia. The fighting was brutal. He later wrote about seeing burned houses with dead families inside. This violence became normal to him. In 1922, he went to Munich and heard Adolf Hitler speak. He was impressed and joined the Nazi Party. He also officially left the Catholic Church. On May 31, 1923, he and other Freikorps members, including a man named Martin Bormann, attacked a schoolteacher named Walther Kato. They beat him and then killed him. They believed Kato had betrayed a fellow nationalist to the French authorities. In 1924, Rudolf was arrested for this murder. He took responsibility as the leader of the group at the trial. He was sentenced to 10 years in prison. He served his time at Brandenburg prison. He was a well-behaved prisoner. The guards liked him because they shared his political views. He was given special privileges, like a job in the prison office and extra writing time. He was released early in July 1928 under a general amnesty law. After prison, he joined a farming group called the Ardaman League. This group believed in a simple, rural life. There, in 1929, he met Hedwig Hensel. They married that same year. Between 1930 and 1943, they would have 5 children, 2 boys and 3 girls. Rudolf worked on a farm, using his experience with horses from the war. During this time, he was noticed by Heinrich Himmler, a leading Nazi. Himmler was expanding the SS, the Nazi Party's security force. On April 1, 1934, Rudolf Haas joined the SS. After joining the SS in 1934, Rudolf Haas was assigned to the Dachau concentration camp. He worked as a block leader, supervising prisoners. His superior was Theodor Eicke, who was creating a system for running camps. Haas learned how to manage prisoners through strict rules and harsh punishment. He did his job well and was promoted. In 1938, he was transferred to the Sachsenhausen concentration camp. He became an adjutant, or senior assistant, to the camp commander. Here, he followed orders without question. In September 1939, he was ordered to execute a Jehovah's Witness prisoner named August Dickmann for refusing to fight in the war. Haas led the firing squad and fired the final shot himself. His efficiency was noticed by his leaders. In January 1940, he was put in charge of the prisoner compound at Sachsenhausen. One very cold day, he ordered prisoners who were not working to stand outside all day. Many prisoners had no warm clothes. When some frozen men were taken to the infirmary, Haas ordered the doors locked. About 145 prisoners died from the cold that day and night. Because he followed orders and managed camps effectively, Heinrich Himmler gave him a new task. In April 1940, Himmler sent Haas to Poland to inspect a possible site for a new camp. The site was near the town of Oswiecim, which the Germans called Auschwitz. It had old army barracks. Haas reported that it was a good location. He was appointed the first commandant of Auschwitz concentration camp. His job was to build and run the camp. At first, Auschwitz was meant for Polish political prisoners. The first prisoners arrived in June 1940. Haas wanted the camp to be more efficient than Dachau or Sachsenhausen. He made the rules very strict. Prisoners who broke rules were severely punished. A common punishment was confinement in a small, standing cell in a basement called Block 11. Prisoners could not sit or lie down. Another punishment was death by shooting at a wall in the courtyard. In June 1941, Heinrich Himmler called Haas to a meeting in Berlin. Himmler told him that Adolf Hitler had ordered the complete destruction of the Jewish people in Europe. This plan was called the final solution. Himmler said Auschwitz had been chosen as a major place for this killing. He told Haas this was a top-secret state matter. Haas was not to discuss it with anyone. He would receive further instructions from a man named Adolf Eichmann. Haas returned to Auschwitz and began to plan how to kill very large numbers of people. At first, he used a method already tried at other camps. He used a gas called carbon monoxide. In September 1941, he tested it on 600 Soviet prisoners of war and 250 sick Polish prisoners. They were locked in the basement cells of Block 11, and the gas was piped in. Haas saw that this method was too slow and not efficient enough for the large numbers Himmler wanted. One of his deputies, Karl Fritsch, had an idea. He suggested using a pesticide called Zyklon B. This product came in granules that released a deadly poison gas when exposed to air. In August 1941, Fritsch tested it on a group of Soviet prisoners. He locked them in a cellar, threw in the Zyklon B granules, and sealed the door. Haas observed that the Zyklon B killed people much faster than carbon monoxide. He decided this was the best method. To kill on a larger scale, they needed bigger spaces. They converted some peasant cottages outside the main camp into simple gas chambers. These were called bunkers. Victims were told they were going to take a shower. They were led into these rooms, the doors were sealed, and Zyklon B granules were dropped inside through special holes in the wall. After everyone was dead, groups of prisoners called Sonderkommando had to remove the bodies. In 1942, new buildings were designed specifically for mass killing. These were large gas chambers connected to crematoria, where the bodies would be burned. They were built at a new part of the camp called Auschwitz II-Birkenau. Trains filled with people arrived directly on railway tracks leading into Birkenau. The process became organized. When a train arrived, SS doctors would perform selection. They quickly looked at the people as they got off the train. They decided who looked strong enough to work. Those people were sent to the barracks as prisoners. Everyone else, the elderly, the sick, women with small children, and young children, were sent to the gas chambers. They were told they were going to be disinfected and showered. To prevent panic, they were told to remember where they hung their clothes. The people were led into the large underground gas chambers. The doors were shut. SS men in gas masks would then pour the Zyklon B granules into the chambers from the roof. The people inside died within 15 to 20 minutes. Afterward, the Sonderkommando prisoners would remove gold teeth, cut hair, and take the bodies to the furnaces in the crematoria to burn them. Haas lived with his wife and children in a comfortable villa just outside the camp fence. His wife knew generally what was happening in the camp. In 1942, Haas began a relationship with a female prisoner. This was against SS rules. He also faced some internal investigations for corruption, as some SS men were stealing valuables taken from the victims. This led to him being temporarily removed as commandant in November 1943. He was given a desk job in Berlin. However, in May 1944, he was ordered back to Auschwitz for a special operation. The goal was to kill the Jewish population of Hungary very quickly. This was called Operation Haas. Over 56 days, about 430,000 Hungarian Jews were brought to Auschwitz by train. The system worked at a frantic pace. The gas chambers and crematoria could not handle the number of bodies. To dispose of them, huge open pits were dug. Bodies were burned in these pits day and night. After this operation, Haas was transferred to another camp in November 1944. In the final weeks of World War II, in April 1945, Rudolf Haas fled Auschwitz. He knew the Soviet army was approaching and that he would be arrested for his actions. He took his family and went into hiding. Following advice from Heinrich Himmler, he disguised himself as a gardener. He used a false name, Franz Lang. For nearly a year, he lived with his family on a remote farm in northern Germany, avoiding capture. British soldiers were tasked with hunting for major war criminals. A special investigation team included a German Jewish refugee named Hans Alexander. Alexander's team received information about a possible SS officer hiding under a false name. They tracked the location to a farm in Gottrapel. On March 11th, 1946, the soldiers raided the farm. They found Haas's wife and children, but he was not there. The soldiers questioned Haas's wife, Hedwig, and his children. They denied knowing where he was. The soldiers then began to threaten his teenage son, Klaus. To protect her son, Hedwig Haas told the soldiers that her husband was hiding on another part of the farm. The soldiers found Rudolf Haas in a small, hidden building. When they discovered him, he tried to bite into a cyanide capsule to kill himself, but the soldiers stopped him. He initially insisted he was just a farm worker named Franz Lang. To prove his identity, a soldier ordered Haas to remove his wedding ring. Haas refused. The soldier threatened to cut off his finger. Haas then gave them the ring. The name Rudolf Haas was engraved inside. His identity was confirmed. The soldiers then beat him with clubs until Hans Alexander ordered them to stop. Haas was taken into British custody. He later stated that he was tortured during this initial arrest and interrogation, which led him to confess. He was transferred to a prison facility and formally interrogated. He gave detailed, calm answers about his role at Auschwitz. He described the process of mass murder in a factual way. His testimony provided the Allies with their first full insider account of the extermination process at Auschwitz. Because of his high rank and direct involvement, he was moved to Nuremberg to be a witness at the main international military tribunal. On April 15, 1946, Haas testified in Nuremberg. He was called as a witness for the defense of another Nazi official, but his testimony only detailed the horrors of the Holocaust. He spoke clearly about receiving orders from Himmler, about using Zyklon B, and about the millions killed. His cold, matter-of-fact description shocked the courtroom. An American prison psychologist who spoke with him wrote that Haas seemed normal, but showed a complete lack of empathy or remorse for what he had done. After testifying, Haas was held in prison. During this time, he wrote long statements and memoirs about his life and actions. The Polish government requested that he be handed over to them, as his crimes were committed on Polish soil. In May 1946, the British authorities agreed. Haas was extradited to Poland and imprisoned in Krakow. The Supreme National Tribunal of Poland put Rudolf Haas on trial. His trial began on March 11, 1947, in Warsaw. He was charged with war crimes and crimes against humanity for his role in the murder of at least 1.1 million people at Auschwitz. During the trial, he did not deny the charges. He repeated his confession, stating he was following orders from Himmler and Hitler. He claimed he was merely a cog in a large machine. However, he also admitted to his direct responsibility as the camp commandant who implemented the systems of killing. The court found him guilty on all counts. On April 2, 1947, he was sentenced to death by hanging. While awaiting execution in his Polish prison cell, Haas wrote final letters to his family. In these letters, he showed some change in thinking. He wrote to his wife that the Nazi ideology was wrong and that his actions were a grave sin against humanity. He wrote to his son advising him to listen to his heart and not blindly follow orders as he had done. He also returned to the Catholic faith, receiving confession and communion from a priest. The Polish authorities decided his sentence would be carried out at the site of his crimes. On April 16, 1947, Rudolf Haas was taken back to the grounds of the Auschwitz I camp. A gallows was constructed specifically for him next to the building that had housed the camp's Gestapo office. Approximately 100 witnesses were present, including former Auschwitz prisoners and Polish officials. He was led up the steps to the gallows. He showed no emotion. A noose was placed around his neck. The trapdoor was opened, and he was hanged. His execution was the last public execution carried out in Poland. After his death, his body was cremated, and the ashes were scattered anonymously. His wife, Hedwig, and their 5 children lived under changed names in Germany after the war. They largely avoided public attention. One of his grandchildren later became a pastor who spoke about the horrors of the Holocaust. Another grandchild was convicted multiple times for fraud related to exploiting the family name. Rudolf Haase's detailed testimony and written memoirs provided crucial evidence for historians about the machinery of the Holocaust, leaving a permanent record of his crimes. The man who commanded the largest killing center of the Holocaust was captured, tried, and executed at the very place where he committed his atrocities. Story 4. Amon Goth was born on December 11, 1908, in Vienna, Austria. Vienna was the capital of the Austro-Hungarian Empire at that time. His family was involved in the book publishing industry. He grew up in a period when the empire ended after World War I, and Austria became a small country with many economic and political problems. As a young man, Goth was drawn to groups that promised strength and order. When he was 17 years old, he joined a Nazi youth group. This was in 1925. The Nazi Party, which was based in Germany, had a growing presence in Austria. Its ideas included strong nationalism and hatred for Jewish people. From 1927 to 1930, Goth was a member of a paramilitary group called the Heimwehr, or Home Guard. This group was anti-Semitic and nationalist. In September 1930, he left that group to officially join the Austrian branch of the Nazi Party. His party membership number was 510,764. That same year, he also joined the Austrian SS. The SS was the Nazi Party's elite paramilitary force. His SS number was 43,673. After joining, Goth began working for the Nazi Party office in the Margareten district of Vienna. He soon moved to work in the Mariahilf district. His jobs involved political work and being part of the SA, the Nazi Party's original paramilitary wing. By early 1933, he was promoted to a squad leader in the SS. His work for the Nazis was illegal under Austrian law at the time. Goth's illegal activities included getting explosives for the Nazi Party. This made him a wanted man in Austria. In June 1933, the Austrian government banned the Nazi Party. Goth fled to Germany to avoid arrest. He settled in Munich, where the Austrian Nazis had set up a base in exile. From there, he smuggled weapons and radios back into Austria and worked as a courier for the SS. In October 1933, Austrian authorities arrested him. However, they released him in December because they did not have enough evidence to hold him. He was arrested again in July 1934 after Austrian Nazis killed the Austrian Chancellor, Engelbert Dollfuss, in a failed coup attempt. Goth managed to escape from custody and fled back to Germany. He went to the SS training facility at Dachau, which was next to the Dachau concentration camp. For a few years after this, from about 1935 to 1937, Goth temporarily stopped his SS and Nazi Party activities. He had differences with his commander. He lived in Munich and tried to help his parents with their publishing business. During this time, he married on the advice of his parents, but the marriage lasted only a few months and ended in divorce. In March 1938, Germany annexed Austria in an event called the Anschluss. Goth returned to Vienna afterward and resumed his work for the Nazi Party. In October 1938, he married a woman named Anna Geiger. They had an SS civil ceremony. Before the wedding, they had to pass strict physical tests required by the SS to prove they were fit to marry. They later had 3 children. Their first son, Peter, was born in 1939 but died as a baby. A second son, Werner, was born in 1940, and a daughter, Ingeborg, was born in 1941. The family kept a home in Vienna throughout the coming war. When World War II began in 1939, Goth was transferred to a different SS unit. He was promoted to the rank of SS Oberscharführer, which is like a staff sergeant in early 1941. In mid-1941, he was given a job in East Upper Silesia, a region in occupied Poland. He worked for an office called the Reich Commissioner for the Consolidation of German Nationhood. His job involved the Nazi efforts to deal with the Jewish population. He gained a reputation as a capable administrator in these tasks. In July 1941, he was commissioned as an SS officer, a second lieutenant. In the summer of 1942, he was sent to the city of Lublin in Poland. There, he worked under a senior SS commander named Odilo Globoknik. He was part of a secret operation called Operation Reinhard. This operation was responsible for building and running extermination camps. Gotha's specific duties during this 6-month period are not fully known because it was secret, but later trial records state he was involved in rounding up people and transporting them to these camps. In February 1943, Amon Goth was given a new assignment. He was ordered to oversee the construction and then become the commandant of a new forced labor camp in Plasso, on the outskirts of Krakow, Poland. The camp was built on the grounds of 2 Jewish cemeteries. Prisoners, used as slave labor, built the camp within a month. On March 13, 1943, the Jewish ghetto in Krakow was liquidated. Goth was in charge of this operation. SS troops and police entered the ghetto and forced all remaining Jews out of their homes. Those who were seen as fit for work were marched to the new camp at Plasso. Those deemed too old, young, or sick were either shot on the spot or put on trains sent to extermination camps. Hundreds of people were killed in the streets during this action. When the prisoners arrived at Plasso, Goth spoke to them. He told them, "I am your God." Goth had complete control over the Plasso camp. He lived in a large villa directly next to the camp. He began to personally kill prisoners regularly. He would often stand on the balcony of his villa with a rifle and shoot at prisoners in the camp below. He did this if he thought they were moving too slowly, resting, or for no reason at all. His 2 large dogs, a Great Dane and a German Shepherd, were trained to attack and maul prisoners on his command. He also enforced brutal collective punishment. If one prisoner from a work group escaped, Goth would punish the entire group. On one occasion, he ordered that every second person in a line of workers be shot. On another, he shot every 5th person in a group because one person was missing. The main execution site in the camp was a place the prisoners called Hugewa Gorka, a large hill. Thousands of people were shot and buried there. In September 1943, Goth was ordered to liquidate the Jewish ghetto in the city of Tarnow. He led this operation. The remaining Jewish people were gathered in a square. Goth personally shot between 30 and 90 women and children during this action. Around 10,000 Jews from Tarnow were sent to Plasso to be used as slave laborers. The others were sent to Auschwitz extermination camp. Life in Plasso was defined by constant fear of Goth. He killed people for small reasons. He shot a Jewish cook because the soup he was served was too hot. Prisoners caught smuggling food were executed. 2 Jewish women, Helen Hirsch and Helen Jonas, were forced to work as his maids in his villa. They lived in constant terror of his beatings and sudden violence. The camp was originally called a labor camp, but in early 1944 it was officially designated a concentration camp. This meant it came under stricter control from the main SS offices in Berlin. Around this time, Goth was promoted to the rank of SS captain. In May 1944, he was told that 10,000 Hungarian Jews would be sent to Plasso. To make space, he ordered all children in the camp to be taken to a special yard. The next day, almost all of these children were sent to Auschwitz and killed. Gotha's actions were not only about killing. He also stole property from the Jews who were murdered. This was against Nazi rules, which stated that all stolen Jewish property belonged to the German state, not to individual officers. He lived a life of luxury with cars and horses, while the prisoners starved. In September 1944, the SS arrested Goth. They did not arrest him for murdering prisoners. They arrested him for stealing Jewish property, for not properly feeding the prisoners, and for mismanaging camp records. He was dismissed from his command at Plasso. SS doctors later examined him and said he had a mental illness. He was sent to a sanatorium in Bad Tolz, Germany. As the war ended in May 1945, Goth was found by American soldiers. He was wearing a regular German army uniform and did not tell them he was an SS officer. He was placed in a prisoner of war camp. Although Amon Goth was in American custody, the authorities did not initially know who he was. He had used a false name and was hidden among thousands of other German prisoners of war. In 1946, a survivor of the Plasso camp named Joseph Lukovich, who was working as an investigator for a Jewish organization, was searching for war criminals. He learned that Goth might be in an American camp. Lukovich went to the camp and, with the help of American officers, arranged a lineup of prisoners. He identified Goth immediately. To be certain, Lukovich brought other Plasso survivors to the camp. They also positively identified Goth as the former commandant. After his identification, Goth was removed from the prisoner of war camp. He was extradited to Poland to stand trial. The Polish authorities charged him with war crimes. His trial took place before the Supreme National Tribunal of Poland in Krakow between August 27 and September 5, 1946. During the trial, many witnesses gave evidence against Goth. Survivors of the Plasso camp, including his former maid Helen Hirsch, testified. They described in detail how he personally shot prisoners from his balcony, how he set his dogs on people, and how he ordered mass executions. Witnesses from the ghetto liquidations in Krakow and Tarnow also testified. They stated that they saw Goth shoot women and children himself. The court examined documents and heard about the theft of Jewish property. Goth's defense argued that he was only following orders from his superiors. He claimed that the executions were part of the law at that time. The judges rejected this defense. They found that his actions went beyond any orders and included personal acts of cruelty and murder. On September 5, 1946, the court found Amon Goth guilty. He was convicted of 3 main crimes. First, he was found guilty of membership in the Nazi SS, which was declared a criminal organization. Second, he was convicted for the collective crime of ordering the imprisonment, torture, and extermination of individuals and groups. Third, and most significantly, he was convicted of homicide. This was a historic verdict. It was the first time at a war crimes trial that someone was found personally guilty of murder, for personally killing, maiming, and torturing a substantial, albeit unidentified number of people. The sentence was death by hanging. The execution was carried out on September 13, 1946, at Montelupich prison in Krakow. The gallows were set up not far from the site of the Plasso camp. After his execution, his body was cremated and the ashes were scattered in the Vistula River. After the trial and execution, the story of Goth's family continued. His wife, Anna, had divorced him during the war after learning of his affair. Goth had a relationship with a woman named Ruth Irene Calder during his time in Plasso. They had a daughter named Monica, born after Goth's arrest. Calder later took Goth's last name and told her daughter heroic stories about him, hiding the truth of his crimes for many years. Monica Hertwig only learned the full extent of what her father had done as an adult. She spent years struggling with this knowledge and later met with Holocaust survivors, including Goth's former maid Helen Jonas Rosenzweig, in an attempt to understand and acknowledge the truth. One of Goth's granddaughters, Jennifer Teege, discovered a book about him in a library as an adult, learning for the first time that she was related to a major war criminal. The site of the Plasso camp is now a memorial with few remaining structures, serving as a permanent record of the crimes committed there under Amon Goth's command. Story 5. Michel Fourniret was born on April 4th, 1942, in the town of Sedan, France. His father was a metal worker. His mother was a homemaker. The family was not rich, but they had what they needed. As a child, Michel was very quiet. He did not play often with other children. He preferred activities he could do alone. He enjoyed playing chess and listening to classical music. People who knew him then said he was intelligent. Later in his life, he would claim that his mother sexually abused him when he was a boy. This claim was never proven. He went to school and did reasonably well. He was more interested in technical and practical subjects than in literature or arts. After his basic schooling, he studied to become a technical drawing teacher. He did not finish this training. As a young adult, Michel Fourniret moved from job to job. He never stayed in one place for long. He worked as a forestry worker cutting trees. He worked as a handyman. He also worked as a supervisor in a school. He was not successful in building a career. He had trouble keeping steady work. His social life was very limited. He did not have many friends. He found it difficult to talk to people and form normal relationships. He began to develop a strong interest in young girls. This was a secret part of his life. In 1966, when he was 24 years old, he was arrested for the first time. He had sexually assaulted a young girl. He was convicted for this crime. He received a sentence but was released after a short time. After this, he tried to live a normal life. He got married and had a son, but his marriage did not last. His wife left him because of his violent behavior and his interest in young girls. In 1984, he was arrested again. This time, he was convicted for sexually assaulting 5 young girls. The court sent him to prison. He spent several years in prison. While in prison, he began to write letters to women he did not know. He placed ads in magazines looking for a pen pal. One of these ads was in a Catholic magazine. A woman named Monique Olivier saw the ad and wrote to him. They started a long correspondence through letters. In these letters, Michel wrote about his dark fantasies. He wrote about wanting to rape and kill young virgin girls. Monique Olivier did not stop writing to him. Instead, she wrote back. She said she would help him with his fantasies if he would help her first. She asked him to kill her husband. Michel Fourniret was released from prison in 1987. He did not kill Monique's husband, but he and Monique began a relationship soon after his release. After his release from prison in 1987, Michel Fourniret moved in with Monique Olivier. They became a couple. Together, they began to plan crimes. Their first known crime happened a few months later, in December 1987. On December 11th, 1987, Fourniret and Olivier drove in 2 separate cars to the city of Auxerre. They had seen a 17-year-old girl named Isabelle Lavillade or 2 before. They decided to target her. That afternoon, they saw Isabelle walking home from school. Monique Olivier stopped her car near the girl. She asked Isabelle for directions, pretending to be lost. When Isabelle came close to the car, Olivier asked her if she could get in the car to show her the way better. Isabelle agreed and got into the passenger seat. Olivier drove a short distance to a prearranged spot. Fourniret was waiting there beside his own car. He was pretending his car had broken down. Olivier stopped and pretended to offer help. She asked Fourniret if he needed a ride. This was all part of their plan. Fourniret got into the back seat of the car, behind Isabelle. Once he was in the car, he quickly took out a piece of rope. He put the rope around Isabelle Laville's neck and choked her until she lost consciousness. Monique Olivier then handed Fourniret a drug called Rohypnol, which is a strong sedative. They used this drug to keep Isabelle unconscious. They drove the unconscious girl to their home in the village of Saint-Cyr-les-Collines. Inside the house, Fourniret raped Isabelle Laville. After raping her, he strangled her to death. Later that night, they drove her body to a remote area called Bussienov. They threw her body down an old and used well. Her body would not be found for many years. Several months later, in March 1988, a woman named Farida Hamish contacted Forneret. Her husband was a bank robber who was in prison. Forneret had shared a prison cell with this man. Farida Hamish asked Forneret to help her dig up stolen money and gold that her husband had hidden in a cemetery. Forneret agreed to help her. They went to the cemetery at night and dug up the treasure. It was a box full of gold bars and coins. After they retrieved the box, Hamish gave Forneret a portion of the treasure as payment for his help. This portion was worth a lot of money. But Forneret and Olivier wanted all of it. On April 12, 1988, they tricked Farida Hamish into leaving her apartment. They told her they needed to meet for something important. They picked her up in their car. They drove her to a forest called Clairefontaine-en-Yvelines. There, Forneret strangled Farida Hamish to death. They buried her body in the forest. Her body has never been found. After killing her, Forneret and Olivier went back to Farida Hamish's apartment. They used a key they had taken from her to get inside. They stole the rest of the gold and coins. They sold this treasure. With the money, they bought a large old house called the Château du Sado in the town of Donchery. This became their new home. By August 1988, Monique Olivier was pregnant with Forneret's child. On August 3rd, they went to a supermarket parking lot in Chalon-sur-Marne. They saw a 20-year-old woman named Fabienne Leroy. Olivier pretended to feel very sick. They asked Fabienne for help. They asked her to get in their car and show them the way to a doctor's office. Fabienne Leroy, wanting to help a sick woman, got into their car. Instead of driving to a doctor, they drove to a remote military area near Mourmelon-le-Grand. Forneret ordered Olivier to check if Fabienne was a virgin. Olivier refused to do this. Forneret then raped Fabienne Leroy in the back of the car. After the rape, he took out a gun. He shot Fabienne Leroy in the chest, killing her. They left her body in the woods. It was found the next day. In January 1989, Forneret was on a train. He met a 21-year-old woman named Jean-Marie Desremalt. They talked on the train. She told him she was staying at a convent in Charleville-Mézières. On March 18th, Forneret and Olivier met her at the train station. They used fake names. They invited her to their house for a visit. She accepted. They drove her to their home in Floing. At the house, Forneret asked Jean-Marie if she was a virgin. She said she was not, and that she had a boyfriend. This made Forneret very angry. He attacked her. She fought back. During the struggle, Forneret and Olivier tied her up and put tape over her mouth. Forneret then strangled her. That night, they drove her body to their new chateau in Donchery. They buried her body in the garden. Forneret and Olivier got married in July 1989. On December 20th, 1989, they drove to Belgium with their baby son. In a neighborhood in Namur, they saw a 12-year-old girl named Elizabeth Brichette walking home from a friend's house. Forneret approached her. He said his baby was sick and asked her for directions to a doctor. Elizabeth was a kind girl and agreed to help. She got into their car to show them the way. Instead, they drove her all the way back to their house in France. When they got there, Forneret saw that the girl was menstruating. This upset his fantasy. Olivier cleaned the girl. The next day, they took her to the chateau. Forneret tried to suffocate her with a plastic bag, but it did not work. He then strangled her. They buried her body in the garden of the chateau, near the body of Jean-Marie Desremalt. On November 21st, 1990, after leaving a court hearing, they went to a shopping center in Riez. They saw a 13-year-old girl named Natasha Danais. She was running an errand for her mother. They asked her for directions. When she came close to their van, they forced her inside. They drove to a secluded beach area. There, Forneret stabbed her twice in the chest with a screwdriver. He then strangled her. They left her body on the beach. After this, the couple moved to Belgium in the early 1990s. For many years, they did not kill anyone that the police know of. Then in 2000, Fourniret started again. He acted alone this time. On May 16, 2000, he drove to Charleville-Mézières. He saw an 18-year-old girl named Céline Saison. He offered her a ride in his van. She accepted. He drove her to a forest in Belgium, raped her, and then strangled her with a rope. He left her body there. On May 5, 2001, he drove to Sudan. He met a 13-year-old girl named Mananya Thumpong. He had given her a ride once before. He tricked her by saying she could come to his house to play with his son. She got into his van. He drove her to a forest in Palaiseau, Belgium, and strangled her. The crime stopped for Michel Fourniret on June 26, 2003. On that day, in the Belgian town of Ciney, he attempted to kidnap a 13-year-old girl. The girl fought back and screamed. People nearby heard her and came to help. They restrained Fourniret and called the police. The police arrested him at the scene. When they searched his home in Sartcastin, they found items like ropes, sedatives, and maps. His wife, Monique Olivier, was also taken in for questioning. At first, both Fourniret and Olivier refused to talk about any other crimes. They only talked about the attempted kidnapping. The police suspected they were involved in more, but they had no proof. Fourniret was held in prison in Belgium on the kidnapping charge. For almost a year, the case did not move forward. Then in 2004, Monique Olivier decided to speak. She made a deal with the police. She offered to tell them everything about the murders in exchange for a lighter sentence. She began to confess, providing detailed information. She told the police that her husband had killed many people since 1987. She gave names, dates, and locations. Based on her information, the police went to Michel Fourniret in his cell. Confronted with his wife's confession, Fourniret also began to talk. He confessed to killing 9 people. He described how he did each killing and where he left the bodies. The police now had a full picture of his crimes. French and Belgian police worked together. Using the information from the confessions, they started to find the bodies of the victims. On July 3, 2004, police went to the garden of the Château du Sautou in Donchery. They dug in the places Fourniret and Olivier described. They found the skeletons of Elisabeth Brichet and Jean-Marie Desremalt. On July 11, 2006, police searched an old well in Bussienave. They found the remains of Isabelle Laville. Fourniret and Olivier were formally charged with multiple murders. They were transferred from Belgium to France to stand trial. The legal process was very long. It took years to gather all the evidence, interview witnesses, and prepare the case. The main trial began on March 27, 2008, in the city of Charleville-Mézières. The court heard evidence for 7 murders where bodies had been found. These victims were Isabelle Laville, Fabien Leroy, Jean-Marie Desremalt, Elisabeth Brichet, Natasha Danais, Céline Saison, and Mananya Thumpong. The court listened to the confessions, forensic reports, and testimony from the victims' families. Monique Olivier testified against her husband, describing her role as his helper. On May 28, 2008, the judge gave the verdict. Michel Fourniret was found guilty of all 7 murders. The sentence was life in prison with no possibility of parole. This meant he would never be released. Monique Olivier was found guilty of being an accomplice to these murders. Her sentence was life in prison, but she could ask for parole after serving at least 28 years. The court also ordered the couple to pay 1.5 million euros to the families of the victims for their suffering. Neither Fourniret nor Olivier appealed the court's decision. After this trial, Fourniret continued to confess to more crimes. In February 2018, he confessed to 2 more murders from long ago. He said he killed Marie-Angélie Demise in 1988 and a British student named Joanna Parrish in 1990. In March 2020, he confessed to killing a 9-year-old girl named Estelle Mausen, who had disappeared in 2003. These confessions led to new investigations and charges. Because of these new confessions, Monique Olivier faced another trial. This trial started in November 2023. She was charged with complicity in the murders of Joanna Parrish, Marie-Angélie Demise, and Estelle Mausen. This trial was separate from the 2008 trial. Michel Fourniret never left prison after his 2008 sentence. His health became poor. In May 2021, he was taken to a hospital from his prison cell because he had trouble breathing. He died in the hospital on May 10, 2021, at the age of 79. Monique Olivier remains in prison. Her fate depends on the results of her new trial and the decisions of parole boards many years in the future. The families of the victims received legal justice, but they continued to live with the loss of their loved ones. The story of these crimes is now a closed legal case. Story 6. Thierry Paulin was born on November 28, 1963, in Fort-de-France, a city on the Caribbean island of Martinique. His mother was a teenager when he was born. His father left the island and moved to mainland France just after Thierry's birth. Thierry never knew his father during his early years. Thierry was raised by his father's mother, his paternal grandmother. His grandmother owned a restaurant. She was often very busy with her work. Because she was busy, she did not watch Thierry closely. He spent much of his time alone without much guidance from her. When Thierry was 10 years old, his life changed. His mother had since married and had other children. Thierry went to live with his mother and his new stepbrothers and sisters. He found it difficult to fit in with the family. He did not feel like he belonged. During this time, Thierry's behavior began to change. He started acting out. He became aggressive and violent towards the other children in the household. His mother found his behavior hard to manage. The situation at home became very tense. Because of this ongoing trouble, Thierry's mother made a decision. She contacted Thierry's father, who was now living in France. She asked the father to take Thierry to live with him in mainland France. Thierry's father agreed to this. One reason he agreed was to avoid having to send regular child support payments to the mother. As a teenager, Thierry moved to Toulouse, a city in France, to live with his father. Thierry was of mixed race. In his new school, most of the other students were white. He felt different and had a hard time making friends. He was often lonely. Thierry did not do well in his studies. He found school difficult and his grades were poor. He failed his important exams. He saw no future for himself in the school system. He felt like he had no direction. At the age of 17, looking for structure and a way out, Thierry made a choice. He decided to join the military early. He entered a program for young recruits. He was assigned to a logistics unit in the airborne forces. The military gave him a routine, but it did not change his deeper feelings of isolation. After finishing his military service, Thierry learned some news. He found out that his mother and her family had moved from Martinique to Nanterre, a suburb of Paris. He decided to go to them. He moved to Nanterre to live with his mother again. The relationship remained bad. There was constant hostility between Thierry and his mother's family. He did not feel welcome. He needed a job and a way to be independent from this difficult home life. Thierry found work in Paris. He became a waiter at a famous nightclub called the Paradis Latin. This nightclub was known for its drag shows, where men dressed as women to perform. Thierry became interested in this world. He started performing at the club. He began dressing in drag and singing songs on stage. His favorite singer was Eartha Kitt, and he would often perform her songs. This was the first time he felt some sense of identity and acceptance. One night, his mother came to see him perform. She entered the nightclub and watched the beginning of his act. She saw her son dressed as a woman. She turned around and left the club just seconds after the performance started. She did not approve of his life. While working at the Parody Latin, Thierry met a young man named Jean-Thierry Mathurin. Mathurin was 19 years old and was from French Guiana. Mathurin was a drug addict. Thierry fell in love with him. The two quickly became a couple. Thierry also began using drugs around this time. He started selling drugs as well to make extra money. His relationship with Mathurin and their drug use became the center of his life. He wanted money to support their lifestyle. Thierry Paulin and his boyfriend, Jean-Thierry Mathurin, needed money to pay for their drugs and their desired lifestyle. They decided to get money by robbing people. They targeted elderly women who lived alone. They believed these women would be easy targets and might have cash or valuables in their homes. Their method was simple. Paulin, who was charming and polite, would approach an elderly woman in her apartment building or on the street. He would start a friendly conversation. He would often ask for help, like directions or for a glass of water. This was a trick to get the woman to open her apartment door. Once the door was open, Paulin and Mathurin would force their way inside. The first known attack happened on October 5th, 1984. Paulin and Mathurin went to the apartment of an 83-year-old woman named Anna Barbier-Ponthis. They talked their way inside. Once in the apartment, they attacked her. They beat her and then suffocated her by holding a pillow over her face until she died. After killing her, they searched the apartment and took 300 francs. On the same day, they attacked another woman, 91-year-old Germaine Petito. They beat her and robbed her, but she survived. She was too shocked and injured to give the police a clear description of the men. This first murder and attack established their pattern. Over the next 2 months, October and November of 1984, they committed more crimes. They attacked 8 more elderly women, mainly in the Montmartre area of Paris. All of these women were killed. The way they killed was often violent and cruel. They sometimes put plastic bags over the victims' heads to suffocate them. One victim was forced to drink drain cleaner. They always took money, jewelry, or any other items they could sell quickly. Paulin later told police that he chose women who seemed weak or alone. He also said he sometimes chose women who were rude or unfriendly to him when he first spoke to them. The robberies were the main reason for the attacks, but the violence seemed to go beyond what was needed just to steal. With the money from these crimes, Paulin and Mathurin lived an expensive life. They went to nightclubs, drank champagne, and used cocaine. They bought nice clothes. This spending required more money, which led them to plan more robberies. In late November 1984, the 2 men left Paris and went to the city of Toulouse. They stayed at the home of Paulin's father. Paulin's father did not accept Mathurin and did not approve of their relationship. They argued violently. After these fights, Paulin and Mathurin ended their relationship. Mathurin returned to Paris alone. Paulin stayed in Toulouse for almost a year, trying to start a business for drag performers. This business failed. Paulin returned to Paris in the autumn of 1985. He resumed his life of drugs and nightclubs. He soon needed money again. He began attacking elderly women alone without Mathurin. Starting on December 20th, 1985, a new series of murders began. The methods were slightly different. The killings were quicker and less violent than before. The killer now seemed focused only on getting money fast. He would strangle or suffocate the women shortly after entering their apartments. 8 elderly women were killed in this way between December 1985 and June 1986. The police investigating these new murders collected evidence. They found fingerprints at some of the crime scenes. These fingerprints matched the fingerprints found at the murder scenes from late 1984. The police now knew the same person was responsible for both sets of crimes. They were looking for one man, but they did not know his name or what he looked like. They did not connect these crimes to Paulin yet. In the autumn of 1986, Paulin was involved in a different crime. He owed money to his cocaine dealer. He attacked this dealer with a baseball bat. The dealer went to the police. Paulin was arrested for this assault. He was found guilty and sentenced to 16 months in prison. It was during this time in prison that doctors tested him and told him he was HIV positive. This meant he had the virus that causes AIDS. After serving his sentence, he was released. Knowing he was seriously ill changed his behavior. He wanted to enjoy the time he had left. He began throwing large, expensive parties for his friends. To pay for these parties and for more drugs, he needed even more money. This need led him to commit more murders. On November 25, 1987, Paulin attacked 2 women. He murdered 79-year-old Rachel Cohen. Later the same day, he went to the apartment of 87-year-old Bert Finalteri. He suffocated her and took her money. He believed she was dead. 2 days later, on November 27th, he strangled Genevieve Germont. She was his last victim. However, Bert Finalteri was not dead. She was found alive, though badly injured, in her apartment. She was taken to a hospital. She survived. Bert Finalteri, the 87-year-old woman who survived the attack, slowly recovered in the hospital. When police detectives spoke to her, she was able to give a clear description of the man who had attacked her. She said he was a mixed-race man in his 20s. She said he had a hairstyle like the athlete Carl Lewis, which was short with relaxed curls. She also noted he wore a single earring in his left ear. The police wrote this description down and distributed it to officers working in the area where the attacks happened. On December 1st, 1987, a local police inspector named Francis Jacob was walking on patrol in the 18th arrondissement of Paris. He saw a man walking down the street. The man matched the description from Bert Finalteri perfectly. He was mixed race, in his 20s, had the described hairstyle, and wore an earring in his left ear. Inspector Jacob approached the man and asked for his identification. The man gave his name as Thierry Paulin. Inspector Jacob arrested him on the spot based on the strong physical match to the suspect description. Paulin was taken to a police station for questioning. For 2 days, detectives interrogated him. At first, Paulin denied any involvement in the attacks. However, the police had strong evidence. They had the detailed description from a living victim. They also began to connect him to the locations and times of the murders. Confronted with this, Paulin eventually confessed. He admitted to attacking and killing many elderly women. He also told the police about the involvement of his former boyfriend, Jean-Thierry Mathurin, in the first series of crimes in 1984. Based on Paulin's confession, the police immediately located and arrested Jean-Thierry Mathurin. Mathurin was questioned separately. He also confessed to his role in the 1984 attacks and murders. With both men in custody, the police began the long process of matching their confessions to the many unsolved cases. Paulin claimed responsibility for 21 murders. The official police investigation linked him to 18 of them for certain. Thierry Paulin was charged with multiple counts of murder and robbery. He was sent to the Fraines prison to wait for his trial. However, he never stood trial. His health, which had been failing since his AIDS diagnosis, rapidly became worse after his arrest. In early 1988, he became very ill. He developed tuberculosis and meningitis. His body grew weak, and he was eventually moved to the hospital wing of the prison. He was almost paralyzed and needed constant medical care. Thierry Paulin died in the prison hospital on April 16, 1989. Because he died before his trial, he was never formally convicted in a court of law. With Paulin dead, the legal focus turned to Jean-Thierry Mathurin. He was put on trial only for the crimes committed in 1984, when he was actively participating with Paulin. The court found him guilty of multiple murders and attacks. The judge sentenced him to life in prison. The court also stated that he must serve at least 18 years before he could be considered for parole. Mathurin remained in prison. He was released on parole in January 2009, after serving over 20 years. The families of the victims received legal closure from the confessions in Matherin's trial, but no justice was directly served on Thierry Paulin due to his death. The case was officially closed by the Paris police. The series of murders, which had terrified the city for years, finally ended. Story 7. Marcel Petiot was born on January 17, 1897, in the town of Auxerre, France. He grew up in a middle-class family. As a teenager, he was often in trouble. When he was a teenager, he robbed a postbox. He was caught and charged with theft. The court ordered a doctor to check his mental health. The doctor said Marcel had a mental illness. Because of this illness, the court let him go without punishment. Marcel was expelled from many schools for bad behavior. His education was unstable. Finally, he finished his schooling at a special academy in Paris in July 1915. World War I was happening. Marcel joined the French army in January 1916. During the war, he was injured by enemy fire and also by poison gas. He began to show signs of a mental breakdown. The army sent him to rest homes to recover. While in these rest homes, he stole things. He stole army blankets, morphine medicine, and supplies. He also stole personal items like wallets and letters from other soldiers. He was arrested and put in a jail in Orleans. Doctors at a mental hospital examined him again. They confirmed he had serious mental illnesses. Despite this, the army sent him back to fight in June 1918. Only 3 weeks later, he hurt his own foot with a grenade. He was transferred away from the front. He was finally discharged from the army with a pension for his disability. After the war, France had a fast education program for veterans. Marcel used this program to study medicine. He finished medical school in only 8 months. He got his medical degree in December 1921. He then started work as a doctor in the small town of Villeneuve-sur-Yonne. In this town, his behavior was strange and often illegal. He gave patients strong, addictive drugs. He performed illegal abortions. He also stole from people. He was paid by his patients and also by government health funds. In 1926, a woman named Louise Delaveau disappeared. She was the daughter of one of his patients, and he had a romantic relationship with her. Neighbors said they saw Marcel putting a large trunk into his car around the time she vanished. The police investigated, but could not prove anything. They decided she had simply run away. Also in 1926, Marcel decided to go into politics. He campaigned to become mayor of Villeneuve-sur-Yonne. He hired a man to cause trouble and shout down his political opponent during a public debate. Marcel won the election. As mayor, he stole money from the town's budget. The next year, in 1927, he married Georgette Lablé. She was 23 years old and came from a wealthy family of farmers and butchers. They had a son named Gerhardt in April 1928. People in the region complained often about Mayor Petiot. They said he stole things and handled money in dishonest ways. Because of these complaints, he was suspended from his job as mayor in August 1931. He then chose to resign. Many people in the town still liked him. The whole village council resigned in protest to support him. Just 5 weeks later, in October 1931, he was elected as a councillor for the larger Yonne region. In 1932, he was accused of stealing electricity for his home. He lost his council seat because of this. After losing his position, Marcel moved to Paris to start over. In Paris, he set up a new medical office. He used fake documents and credentials to make himself look more impressive. He built a good reputation, and many patients came to see him at his office on Rue de Caumartin. But rumors followed him. People whispered that he was still performing illegal abortions and giving patients too many addictive drugs. In 1936, he was given an official job. This job allowed him to write official death certificates for people. That same year, he He was put in a hospital for a short time because of his habit of stealing things. Doctors called it kleptomania. He was released the next year. He also consistently avoided paying his taxes. When World War II began in 1939, life in France changed. In 1940, Germany defeated France and occupied it. The German forces made new rules. One rule was that French people could be forced to go to Germany to work. Marcel Petiot began selling fake medical certificates. These certificates falsely stated that a person was too sick or disabled to be sent to Germany. He also treated workers who returned from Germany ill. In July 1942, he was put on trial for prescribing too many narcotics. Two of his addicted patients, who were going to testify against him, had disappeared. He was only fined a sum of money. After his trial in 1942, Marcel Petiot began a new, secret activity. Germany occupied Paris, and many people were desperate to escape. This included Jewish families, members of the French resistance, and others wanted by the German police, the Gestapo. Petiot saw a way to make money from their fear. Using the false name Dr. Eugene, Petiot let it be known that he could help people flee France. He told them he had a secret escape network. He said he could get people to Argentina or other countries in South America. The journey, he explained, would go through Spain and Portugal. He asked for a very large fee for this service, 25,000 francs per person. To find customers, Petiot had 3 helpers. Their names were Raoul Fourier, Edmond Pinted, and René Gustave Nezendet. These men spread the word on the street. They told desperate people that Dr. Eugene was trustworthy and could save them. The helpers would then bring the interested people to meet Petiot. Petiot would meet the victims at his medical office or at his private house. His house was located at 21 Rue Lesueur in Paris. He bought this house in 1941. He told his victims they would be safe there before their journey. He was very convincing. He showed them fake travel documents and maps to make the plan seem real. When a victim or a family arrived at his house, Petiot took them to a small, private room. He then told them a final lie. He said that the government of Argentina required all new people entering the country to get special vaccinations. He said this was to prevent diseases. He told them he needed to give them these shots right away. The injection he gave them was not a vaccine. It was a poison called cyanide. He injected the poison directly into their veins. The poison worked very quickly. The victim would fall unconscious and die within minutes. Petiot did this to single people, to couples, and to entire families, including children. After a person was dead, Petiot would search their body and their luggage. He took all their money, jewelry, and any other valuables they had brought. He took their clothes, their identity papers, and their suitcases. He kept everything of value for himself. Next, he had to get rid of the bodies. At first, he put bodies in his car at night and drove to the River Seine. He dropped the bodies into the water. But this was risky. Someone might see him. So he started using his house on Rue Lesueur for this purpose. In the basement of the house, he built a special triangular room. The room was soundproof, so no screams could be heard. It had only one door, which he could lock from the outside. There was also a peephole in the door, so he could watch the victim die after the injection. To destroy the bodies, he tried different methods. He sometimes used a large pit in the backyard of the house. He put bodies in the pit and poured quicklime over them. Quicklime is a chemical that makes flesh break down very fast. He also used a large coal-fired heating stove in the basement. He chopped up the bodies and burned the pieces in this stove. Thick, black smoke would come out of the chimney. His 3 helpers did not know about the murders. They only brought people to him and took a small part of the fee. They believed Petiot was really helping people escape. They did not know he was killing them. The German Gestapo eventually heard about an escape route for Jews and resistance fighters. They wanted to find and destroy this network. In 1943, they captured one of Petiot's helpers, Raoul Fourier. They tortured him to get information. Fourier told them about Dr. Eugene. The Gestapo then captured the other two helpers, Pinted and Nezendet. They were also tortured. They confessed that Dr. Eugene was Dr. Marcel Petiot. The Gestapo arrested Petiot in May 1943. They thought he was part of the French resistance. They did not know he was a murderer. They put him in prison and questioned him for many months. However, Petiot did not confess to the murders. He only talked about helping people escape. The Gestapo could not find any proof of the killings at that time. They released Petiot in January 1944 because they had no clear evidence against him. After his release, Petiot returned to his house at 21 Rue Lesueur. He continued his scheme. More victims came, hoping for escape. He killed them, took their belongings, and burned their bodies in the basement stove. The number of people he killed during this time grew. The belongings of the victims piled up in his house. In March 1944, people living near 21 Rue Lesueur began to complain. A very bad smell came from the house. Also, large amounts of thick, black smoke kept coming from the chimney. The neighbors thought there might be a chimney fire. On March 11th, they called the police. The police called the fire department. The firemen broke into the house to put out the supposed fire. Inside, they found no normal fire. Instead, in the basement, they found a large coal stove burning very hot. Inside the stove and scattered around the basement were human remains. They found parts of bodies that had been burned. In the backyard, they discovered a pit filled with quicklime and more human remains. They also found a canvas bag containing body parts. The police were called to the scene. The police searched the entire house. They found enough body parts to make at least 10 different people. They also found a huge collection of personal items. There were 72 suitcases and over 650 kilograms of objects. These included 1,760 pieces of clothing, men's suits, women's dresses, coats, shoes, and even a pair of children's pajamas. All these items belonged to the missing victims. The police now knew a serial killer had used this house. The police identified the house's owner as Dr. Marcel Petiot. They immediately started looking for him. But Petiot was gone. He had left Paris just before the discovery. For the next several months, he hid with friends and former patients in the countryside. He told them a story. He said the Gestapo wanted to kill him because he had been in the French resistance. He let his beard grow and used false names. In August 1944, Paris was liberated from German control. Petiot returned to the city. Using the fake name Henri Valéry, he joined the French forces of the interior, which was the formal resistance army. He used forged papers to become a captain. His job was to interrogate people suspected of being German collaborators. He was helping the police look for war criminals while the police were actually looking for him. A resistance newspaper wrote an article about the horrible discoveries at Rue Lesueur and named Petiot as the suspect. Petiot saw the article. He made a mistake. He wrote a letter to his old lawyer. In the letter, he said the newspaper stories were lies. This letter was postmarked from Paris. It showed the police that Petiot was not in hiding far away. He was right in the city. The police renewed their search. They distributed his photo to patrols. On October 31st, 1944, a police officer recognized Petiot at the metro station Place de la République. Petiot was arrested. When searched, he had a pistol, a large sum of money, and 50 different sets of identity papers. Petiot was put in La Santé prison. Investigators questioned him for many months. They also questioned his wife, his brother, and his friends. They tried to piece together who all the victims were. It was difficult because the bodies were destroyed. They used the clothing and suitcases to identify people. They made a list of 27 missing people who were believed to have been killed by Petiot. The list included Jewish families, resistance fighters, and others who had wanted to escape. Petiot's trial began on March 19, 1946. The courtroom was full. Many lawyers were there, representing the families of the victims. Petiot's defense lawyer was famous. Petiot himself acted strangely during the trial. He laughed and made jokes. He claimed he was a hero of the resistance. He said the people he killed were German spies and collaborators. He said he had killed 63 enemies of France. He admitted to killing 19 of the people found at his house, but said they were bad people. The prosecutors and the victims' lawyers showed evidence that his story was false. They proved that many of the resistance groups he named did not exist. They showed that the victims were not spies. They were innocent people hoping to escape. They showed that Petiot became very rich from the stolen valuables. They said he stole over 200 million francs. The trial lasted for 3 weeks. The jury did not believe Petiot's stories. On April 4, 1946, the jury found him guilty of 26 murders. The judge sentenced him to death by guillotine. Marcel Petiot was executed on the morning of May 25, 1946. The guillotine was set up at the Prison de la Santé. He was beheaded. The total number of his victims was never fully known, but he was one of history's most prolific murderers. Story 8. Vladimir Ionsian was born on August 27, 1937, in Tbilisi. His family was Armenian. As a child, he had a good singing voice. His parents noticed this talent and encouraged him. They wanted him to develop his singing. Because of this, he went to a music school while also attending regular school. He did well in his studies. Because he was a good student, he was accepted into the Tbilisi State Conservatoire after finishing school. This is a school for higher education in music. He studied there to become a better singer. During his second year at the Conservatoire, he began to work in a theater. He worked at this theater for several years. During his time in school, his family had a problem. His father was arrested. His father was sentenced to 7 years in prison for fraud related to his business. This event changed family life. Without his father at home, Vladimir had less guidance. After finishing high school in 1954, Vladimir got into trouble with the law. He was caught stealing. The court did not send him to prison because it was his first offense. Instead, he received a suspended sentence of 5 years. This meant he could stay free, but would go to prison if he committed another crime. In 1959, he was called to join the Soviet army. This is required for all young men. However, Vladimir did not want to go. He told the army office that he had a nervous illness. He said army service would harm his singing voice. The army sent him to a hospital in Tbilisi for a checkup. Doctors there agreed he was not healthy enough for the army. They gave him official papers that said he could not serve. Vladimir took these papers to the army office, but a person working there did not accept them. This person destroyed the papers. Vladimir was then accused of trying to avoid the army. He was put on trial. At the trial, he tried to explain about the medical papers, but the person who destroyed them was not called to testify. The court did not believe Vladimir. He was found guilty and sentenced to 2.5 years in a prison camp. He was sent to a camp in the city of Gori. At the camp, he behaved well. He worked as a cultivator, a job farming the land. Because he behaved well, he was sometimes allowed to leave the camp for short times to go into the city. During one of these times, he did not return to the camp. He went home instead. Because he escaped, his punishment was changed. He had to do 1 year of forced labor. After that, he was released. After his release, the army called him again. This time, he went for another medical examination. Doctors again said he could not serve due to his nervous condition. He finally received official papers that excused him from the army. A short time later, he married a woman named Medea. She was a graduate of the Conservatoire. They had a son together. Vladimir had trouble finding a good job that paid well. He needed money for his new family. He decided to steal with a group of other people. He was caught and arrested again. The court knew about his family. They gave him another suspended sentence, this time for 5 years. His wife was worried about him. She wanted him to stay away from his old friends who got him into trouble. She asked him to move to a different city. He agreed. He moved to the city of Orenburg. In Orenburg, he found a job at the local musical comedy theater. He worked there as a singer. In November 1963, a theater troupe from another city, Kazan, came to Orenburg to perform. With them was a ballerina named Alevtina Dmitrieva. She and her husband stayed in a place near Vladimir's home. Vladimir and Alevtina met and began a romantic relationship. Alevtina was having problems at work. The theater management in Orenburg told her she was not a good enough dancer. They said she needed more training. This made her very upset. Vladimir wanted to help her. He told her he had a friend in the city of Ivanova who could help her find work. He decided to leave his job and his family in Orenburg to go with Alevtina to Ivanova. Vladimir Ionsian and Alevtina Dmitrieva arrived in Ivanova. Things did not go well there. His friend could not help Alevtina find dance work. They soon left Ivanova for Moscow. Vladimir told Alevtina he had an uncle in Germany who had died and left him money and an apartment in Moscow. This was a lie. In Moscow, they rented a small room from an elderly woman on Meshchanskaya Street. They had very little money. Alevtina tried to get a job in Moscow's theaters, but was unsuccessful. Vladimir needed to get money quickly. He decided to rob people in their apartments. To do this, he created a simple plan. He would pretend to be a gas utility worker. The Moscow gas company was called Moskaz. He would knock on apartment doors and say he was from Moskaz. He would say he needed to check the gas meter or the stove for safety reasons. This was a common service, so people would let him in. Once inside, he could see if the apartment was worth robbing. First, he needed a weapon and a disguise. He went to GUM, a large department store in Moscow. There, he bought a small camping hatchet. For a disguise, he wore a common Russian winter hat called a nashenka. He always tied the ear flaps at the back of his head. Most Muscovites tied them on top of the head. This small difference would later become an important clue. On December 20th, 1963, he went to an apartment building on Baltiiskaya Street. He carried his hatchet in a bag. He knocked on several doors, saying he was from Moskaz. At one apartment, a 12-year-old boy named Konstantin Sobolev was home alone. Vladimir entered. After checking the apartment and confirming no one else was there, he took out his hatchet. He attacked the boy with it many times. The boy died. Vladimir was now a murderer. He took a few items, a sweater, 60 rubles from a drawer, a bottle of cologne, and a pair of sunglasses. He then left the building calmly. He returned to the rented room with Alevtina. He did not tell her what he had done. He gave her the sweater he had stolen. He told her he had gotten extra money from his work. He continued to lie to her, saying he was an agent for the KGB, the Soviet secret police. He said his trips were for secret missions. She believed him because he often brought home small gifts or money. On December 25th, 1963, he and Alevtina went back to the city of Ivanova. While she was busy, he again pretended to be a gas worker. In an apartment on Kalinina Street, he found a 12-year-old boy named Mikhail Kulshov home alone. He killed the boy with the hatchet. He took the boy's jacket, a pullover, 2 pens, and some savings bonds. He then went to another apartment on Oktyabrskaya Street. He killed a 74-year-old woman who lived there. From her apartment, he only took a small flashlight and 70 kopecks, a very small amount of money. He returned to the building on Kalinina Street. He entered another apartment. There, he found a 15-year-old girl named Galina Petropavlovskaya. He attacked her, raped her, and then struck her in the head 9 times with the hatchet. He thought she was dead. He took a sweater, a jacket, a shawl, and 90 rubles. However, Galina did not die. She survived the attack. Later, She was able to describe the man who hurt her to the police. That evening, Vladimir told Alevtina they were in danger. He said his KGB mission had gone wrong and that people might try to kill them. He said they must leave Ivanova immediately. They walked about 10 kilometers on foot toward Moscow before taking a bus. The police in Ivanova soon found the bodies and the surviving girl. They knew a serial killer was now operating. The case was given high priority. On December 28th, back in Moscow, Vladimir went to an apartment on Leningradsky Prospect. He again used the Moskaz story. An 11-year-old boy named Alexander Lisovets was home. Vladimir attacked him with the hatchet. The boy ran toward the bathroom and tried to lock the door, but Vladimir caught him. He killed the boy in the bathroom. This time, he could not find any valuable items to take. The door to the main bedroom was locked, and he could not open it. He left empty-handed. The police were now searching actively for the Moskaz murderer. They had descriptions from the surviving victim in Ivanova and from a boy in Moscow who had seen the killer but was not attacked. This boy described the unusual way the man tied his hat. The police started to look for a man from outside Moscow. Vladimir committed his final murder on January 8, 1964. He went to an apartment on Sheremetiyevskaya Street. A 46-year-old woman named Maria Ermakova answered the door. This time, he said he was from the housing office. She let him in. He killed her with the hatchet, striking her about 20 times. He then took several items: yarn, socks, a purse, 30 rubles, a wall clock, and a small television set. He carried the television away, wrapped in a sheet. After the murder of Maria Ermakova, people in the neighborhood noticed something unusual. Several residents of Marina Grove saw a man of southern appearance carrying a television set wrapped in a sheet. He put the television into the back of a truck and then left in it. A local police officer, District Commissioner Malashev, also saw this. He was able to remember the first part of the truck's license plate number, 96. He reported this to the detectives. The detectives quickly traced the full license plate number, which was MOG 96 to 26. They found the truck driver. The driver confirmed he had given a ride to a man matching the description. He said he dropped the man off in an area between Trifonovskaya Street and Meshchanskaya Street. This gave the police a specific location to focus their search. Police officers began to ask questions door to door in that area. They showed people a description of the stolen television. A woman living on Shepkina Street gave important information. She said her neighbor had a niece living with a husband who looked like he was from the Caucasus region. She mentioned that this man had recently bought a television and then quickly sold it to another person in a neighboring building. The police found the person who bought the television. This person still had the TV. The police checked the television's identification numbers. They confirmed it was the exact same television stolen from Maria Ermakova's apartment. The police now knew the identity of the thief and murderer. It was the man living on Shepkina Street, Vladimir Ionsian. Officers immediately went to Ionsian's rented room to arrest him. They set up a hidden watch around the apartment. However, Vladimir was not there. Instead, they found Alevtina Dmitrieva. They detained her. During questioning, she told them that Vladimir was a KGB major on a secret mission. The police did not believe her, but had to check. A request was sent to the headquarters of the KGB. The chairman of the KGB, Vladimir Semichastny, personally checked the records. He confirmed that no one named Vladimir Ionsian worked for the KGB. The police now knew Ionsian was lying to everyone, including Dmitrieva. They questioned her more intensely. She was placed in a solitary cell. Eventually, she told them that Vladimir had gone to the city of Kazan. He had told her to meet him there in a few days. The plan was for her to send a telegram to the Kazan post office addressed to Post Restant, which means to be collected. Ionsian would be waiting at the post office to meet her when she arrived. The police decided to use this plan to catch him. They would not send Dmitrieva. Instead, a female police officer from the Moscow Criminal Investigation Department, MUR, would go to Kazan, pretending to be Dmitrieva. The officer would send the telegram and then wait at the post office to be met. The operation to arrest Ionsian in Kazan was led by Salik Yapiev, the Minister of Public Order Protection for the Tatar Republic. On January 12, 1964, the female police officer sent the telegram as planned. Investigators and officers waited secretly around the Kazan railway station post office. Vladimir Ionsian arrived at the post office, looking for Alavtina. He was identified and arrested on the platform without a fight. The Muskaz murderer was in custody. The investigation moved very quickly after his arrest. The highest levels of the Soviet government, including Premier Alexei Kosygin, were following the case. The public was terrified and demanded justice. The legal process was rushed. Ionsian's trial was held behind closed doors, meaning the public could not attend. It was a short trial at the Supreme Court of the RSFSR. He was charged with multiple counts of murder, robbery, and rape. During the trial, the surviving victim, Galina Petropavlovskaya, identified him. The young boy from Moscow, Vladimir Teplov, who had seen him, also gave testimony. The physical evidence, like the stolen television and the hatchet, was presented. Ionsian confessed to the crimes. His defense was weak. The court found him guilty on all charges. On January 30th, 1964, the judge sentenced Vladimir Ionsian to death by firing squad. The verdict was final, with no right to appeal. A request for a pardon was sent to the highest authorities, but it was rejected immediately. The very next day, on January 31st, 1964, at 11 p.m. in the Buturka prison, the sentence was carried out. Vladimir Ionsian was executed. A separate trial was held for Alavtina Dmitrieva. The court found her to be an accomplice, even though Ionsian said during interrogations that she knew nothing about the murders. The court decided she had benefited from the stolen items and had not reported his suspicious activities. She was sentenced to 15 years in prison. However, she did not serve the full term. She was released early in 1972 for good behavior. The surviving victims and the families of the murdered people had to live with the consequences of the crimes for the rest of their lives. Vladimir Ionsian's violent spree, which lasted less than a month, was finally over.